I am announcing today my candidacy for the presidency of the United States. I do not run for the presidency merely to oppose any man, but to propose new policies.
When I think of modern politicians in our country in this century, I think Joe Biden is the RFK of his generation.
In this series, we dive into Robert Kennedy Sr.'s policies to test the statement and explore which politician today does embody the RFK of our generation, starting with his policies towards ending the Vietnam War.
I run for the presidency because I want the Democratic Party and the United States of America to stand for hope instead of despair, for reconciliation of men instead of the growing risk of world war.
Over the past 2 years, as I have moved to break the betrayal of my own silences and to speak from the burnings of my own heart, as I have called for radical departures from the destruction of Vietnam.
I have therefore chosen this time and place to discuss a topic on which ignorance too often abounds and the truth too rarely perceived, and that is the most important topic on earth, peace.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
I mean, do we have the right here in the United States to say that we're going to kill tens of thousands, make millions of people as we have, millions of people refugees, kill women and children as we have? There's 35,000 people without limbs in South Vietnam, 150,000 civilian casualties every year. Thousands of children are killed because of our efforts. This is also our war. Those of us who stay here in the United States, we must feel it. When we use napalm and when a village is destroyed and civilians are killed, this is also our responsibility. This is a moral obligation and a moral responsibility for us here in the United States. And I think we've forgotten about that.
In my judgment, President Bush is right to be concerned about Saddam Hussein's relentless pursuit of weapons of mass destruction.
Joe Biden did so much more than vote for the war. He was the chair of the powerful Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, and he really used his control over that committee to make sure that a majority of the U.S. Senate voted to authorize the war. And it's questionable whether the authorization to start the war could have even passed Congress without all that Biden did to get it approved. So he really did play a major role in bringing us into the Iraq War, a terrible, terrible war. Of course, the statement about chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons were false. And many experts already concluded this at the time of the Senate hearings, but Biden didn't allow these experts to testify. That's really significant.
The core of the USA Patriot Act was in fact written in 1995 by none other than Senator Joe Biden. And Biden, by the way, seemed quite proud that his 1995 bill was so close to the Patriot Act of 2001. This is what he said, quote, "I draft a terrorism bill after the Oklahoma City bombing. And the bill Attorney General John Ashcroft sent up was my bill."
As Vice President, Obama made Vice President Biden, gave him really the Ukraine file. And Biden used that to be an ardent proponent of, more arms for Ukraine, for intervention in what is really a civil war in Ukraine. Of course, his family, his son had very extensive business ties in Ukraine, which doesn't look too good. His son, Hunter, was on the board of the Ukrainian gas company. He was ardently for the expansion of NATO in the 1990s, which, is really the root cause of the renewed the new Cold War.
37 hours after he took the oath of office, President Biden was colluding with the FBI to coerce the social media sites, Google, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, to open portals to allow the federal agencies to censor political speech of Americans. The FBI opened this portal to the CIA, to CISA, the NIH, to the IRS, to the CDC, to the DHS, and about a half dozen other agencies in an obscene orgy of federal censorship that was unprecedented in the American experience.
We have a pandemic among the non-vaccinated, those who are not vaccinated. If you are vaccinated, you are safe. If you are vaccinated, you have over a 98% chance of never catching the virus at all.
Governments love pandemics because it gives them the ability to impose controls on the population that the population would otherwise never accept.
The withdrawal was a catastrophe in my opinion, and there was an inexcusable lack of accountability and negligence. The 11 Marines, 1 sailor, and 1 soldier that were murdered that day have not been answered for.
I appreciate and admire President Zelensky's desire to join NATO.
United States, and I watched the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, go to the Munich Security Conference just days before that in February of 2022 and say in a public forum at a press conference to Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, we want you to join NATO, which is another way of saying, it's a synonym for we plan to put nuclear weapons on Russia.
You think they threw a bait for him?
Are you joking? Of course they did.
Ukraine will never join NATO short of a nuclear war. So, because Russia will never allow it.
If Russia invades, there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea.
Does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
Biolabs in Ukraine. Biolabs.
But the big expenses are going to come after the war, when we have to rebuild all the things that we destroyed. Mitch McConnell was asked, can we really afford to spend $113 billion to Ukraine? He said, don't worry. It's not really going to Ukraine.
It's going to American defense manufacturers.
So he just admitted it's a money laundering scheme. And who do you think owns every one of those companies? BlackRock. As long as our major exports are weapons in war, we will never have a middle class in this country.
So is it fair to say then that you found the Democrats at the present time, you've alluded to peace, and under Trump
they're now the party of war. They're now, they're about to get us into a war with Russia. Putin has said this week that if we send missiles into Russia, that he will consider himself to be at war with NATO and the United States of America. And, and he's got more weapons than he's got. This is the biggest nuclear power in the world. He has 1,200 more nuclear warheads than we do, and they're better than ours. And his electronic warfare system is a generation ahead of ours, as they've shown in Ukraine. They can shoot down almost anything that we send against them. And Kamala Harris, during the convention, made this extraordinarily belligerent speech that appears to have been written by the neocons.
Would you allow, as a Teamster official, a man who was a communist?
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means.
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day.
And it's divided in 4 basic stages: demoralization, destabilization, crisis, normalization.
Every place that you go, you're associated with the leading gangsters and racketeers in the United States.
We must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
Riverkeeper became a hugely important factor in the cleanup of the Hudson River, which today is one of the cleanest waterways in the country, largely because of what they were doing in the 80s and 90s there.
Ultimately, we brought over 500 lawsuits against Hudson River polluters. We forced polluters on the river to spend over $5.5 billion in remediating the Hudson. And today, as a result of our work and the work of many other people, the Hudson is an international model for ecosystem protection. And I was going around our country and the province of Canada doing lectures at big forums, thousands of people, about mercury contamination. I started noticing that these women started showing up at my speeches, and they were mothers, and they'd sit in the front seat. They would come early, and they would then stay late. And it turned out that all of them were the mothers of intellectually disabled children who believed that vaccines had caused their children's injuries. I didn't have it in me to just dismiss them. Somebody should be listening to them. I just didn't want it to be me, because I had other plans for my life.
So I became aware of the work that Bobby Kennedy was doing. And so I went out to Hyannis Fort, which is where his family has a vacation house. And I showed up on his porch when he was out there vacationing. I had a whole slew of women who helped me in gathering a ton of scientific data to bring him. I literally brought a banker's box of articles. And I told him who I was and what I was doing and that I wanted to talk to him. And he said, I don't want to get involved in the vaccine issue. He was not just a no, he was a hard no. He was not interested. And he tried to cut in, and I just kept going. And I told him about my son and the vaccine cord and the brain injury. And I paused and I said, what do you think? And he said, I need to go sailing. And I waited. There was a little chair on his front porch, and I waited. And he came back, and he said, you're still here. And then he looked at me and he said, you're not going to leave, are you? And I said, I will leave, but I need you to read these. I just need you to even read some of these. So he sat up and he read most of this through the night. And I came back the next day and said, what do you think about it? And he said, something's wrong. I'm going to make some calls.
Because you said at the outset that, well, first of all, that you liked Hunter.
Absolutely.
Who was a very likable, I can attest personally, a very likable guy.
Absolutely.
But that you thought it was, useful. He knows his way around Washington. His dad's vice president of the United States, all this stuff. It's all good. But that there was the Icarus problem.
Right.
That, like, if you use those contexts too much, maybe it hurts you. Maybe you get burned by it. Did you feel that when Shokin got fired, like, ooh, maybe this is a little bit a little close to the sun here?
No, on that one, I just was kind of listen. I was believing the narrative because we were in where I felt the Icarus was when we're in Doha and they release some picture on the website that Hunter had joined the board, and that was kind of that was like the tipping point where Icarus had arrived a little too close to the sun.
Yeah.
And the rest, and the rest of my story has, been a slow downward.
Yeah. The trajectory changed at that point.
It was like this, exactly. That was the Icarus moment. It was the middle of night.
Burisma that had released that?
Burisma released it, didn't tell us, and and it was like the most Googled news story like in the world for 18 hours.
Well, because to a civilian, you're thinking, okay, huge, super lucrative Eastern European natural gas company,
incredible.
sort of semi-employed kind of lawyer lobbyist from DC, like, what is he doing on their board? Right.
How is Joe involved, and what's the evidence for that as far as you're concerned?
Well, first of all, I mean, this is Joe Biden's business. This is how he has supported his family in a lavish way, lived in DuPont mansions. He's run an influence peddling operation that his family, first of all, his brothers, ran for him out of Delaware. Delaware is a very peculiar state. It's like the Liechtenstein of America. It has the most opaque corporate laws, rules, and practically every corporation in America is headquartered in Delaware. That gives a tiny state, that gives the senator from Delaware this enormous power because he has all these very wealthy companies wanting favors from him.
The FBI came to my house. I explained the situation in about beginning of November, and I presented them with some stuff I had printed up because during this time, the impeachment hearings had started. Now, there was whispers of it. It was getting close. There was now the big concern. Sure, I'm fearful of my safety. I've definitely witnessed criminal activity on this device. But now there's an impeachment whispers of impeachment that's occurring over a phone call about the previous administration in Ukraine. And I had seen enough information on that laptop to know that there was a blatant pay-for-play scheme. The Bidens made out like bandits during the 2014 Ukrainian conflict. And in my opinion, from what I had seen, President Trump had every reason to call Zelensky, considering Zelensky was created by Igor Kolomoisky, who was Hunter Biden's business partner. And when the Bidens could no longer protect Kolomoisky and his billions that he embezzled during the Ukraine conflict, Kolomoisky did the next best thing. He made his own president. He took his prize actor from his TV series or TV station and groomed him to be the president, got him elected. So now he doesn't have to worry. First thing.
Impeachment nostalgia always warms my heart, but we are here focused on a weaponized government, a whole of government approach that has been turned against the American people. And while Rudy Giuliani may have been running around with the laptop in 2020, what is an indisputable fact is that the FBI had the laptop in 2019. And it appears that the last round of questioning misses the boat, that it's true. The information is authentic. The pictures, the videos, the emails, there hasn't been a single allegation that there is a single doctored email. Unlike what we saw before the FISA courts, where the FBI itself was doctoring emails to try to smear President Trump.
Within Burisma, this Shokin was considered a threat to your business.
Shokin was considered a threat. Shokin was taking a look, and he was a threat. He ended up seizing assets of Nikolai, a house, some cars, a couple properties, and Nikolai actually never went back to Ukraine after Shokin seized all of his assets. And the case was that Shokin, there was all this pressure to fire Shokin from this, the larger community, and then he was fired, and then somehow Burisma was let off the hook. I mean, that's what the story was.
And Joe Biden, of course, was the driving force behind his firing.
Yeah, he was involved in that. There's obviously been
involved. I mean, Biden bragged at Council on Foreign Relations. They had $1 billion coming from IMF, and they said, "If you don't fire this man, you're not getting $1 billion." Right.
I remember going over convincing our team, our others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. I think it was 6 hours. I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
But Joe Biden knew that his son was on the board of this company that was being hassled by the prosecutor whose firing he was calling for.
Right.
when Biden called for Shokin to be fired,
right,
very publicly, and then got it done, like, bam,
right.
What did you think?
Again, the narrative. This has been. They've tried to beat this into my head a million times because it does work on paper. As far as the logical steps, but we were told that Shokin had already been taken care, that he was under control, and that this is going to be a whole big problem for Burisma now.
It's a huge problem
because Shokin. I mean, I don't know what that just got.
The guy was going to shut our business down just got fired. Oh no!
It's just what
you believe they were up to no good. Were they up to doing something corrupt with Burisma? Was the company of Burisma corrupt, as been alleged, which since has been disbanded?
I have no doubt that there were illegal activities engaged in by Burisma. As a matter of fact, the criminal case had been started before me. It continued to expand, and Zlochevsky, who at the time held the post of minister and was the founder and CEO of Burisma, started bringing in people who could provide protection for him. Hunter Biden was among them, and the corruption network expanded as a result. So, yes, to answer your question, there's no doubt in my mind that Burisma was engaged in illegal activities.
Do you believe that Joe Biden or Hunter Biden got bribes?
I do not want to deal in unproven facts, but my firm personal conviction is that yes, this was the case. They were being bribed. The fact that Joe Biden gave away $1 billion in U.S. money in exchange for my dismissal, my firing, isn't that alone a case of corruption?
Now it's time to cover Hunter Biden and Devon Archer's other shady Ukrainian investment, Metabiota. Metabiota was founded by Nathan Wolfe in 2008 to focus on pandemic surveillance.
The vast majority of viruses come from animals, and you can kind of think of this as a pyramid of this bubbling up of viruses from animals into human populations. But only at the very top of this pyramid do these things become completely human.
In 2014, researchers from Metabiota partnered with Shizheng Li, also known as the Wuhan Institute of Virology's Batwoman, and Peter Daszak of CIA-front EcoHealth Alliance. They published a paper titled Evidence for Retrovirus and Paramyxovirus Infection of Multi-Bat Species in China. It's almost like these organizations were collaborating to leave a paper trail that would support human viruses that had originated of zoonotic origin, rather than the much higher risk of gain-of-function viruses leaking from biolabs. Nathan Wolfe also happens to be a known associate of Ghislaine Maxwell, and he thanked Jeffrey Epstein in his 2011 book, The Viral Storm. Another individual with ties to Rosemont Seneca and Ghislaine Maxwell is Hunter Biden's business partner, Devon Archer. By the way, did you know that Ukraine is an international hub for child trafficking? Did you know that the Finger Lakes region of New York is also another global hub for human trafficking? You know, the same Finger Lakes that Hunter Biden decided to ink a giant tattoo of across his back and name all of his business ventures after? It's almost enough to make you ask, was Burisma trafficking contraband besides natural gas?
So Tim Scott, during the Republican debate, said, don't worry, it's not a gift to Ukraine, it's a loan. So raise your hand if you think that that loan's ever getting paid back. Yeah, of course it's not. So why do they call it a loan? Because if they call it a loan, they can impose loan conditions. And what are the loan conditions that we impose on? Number one, an extreme austerity program, so that if you're poor in Ukraine, you're going to be poor forever. Number two, most important, Ukraine has to put all of its government-owned assets up for sale to multinational corporations, including all of its agricultural land, the biggest single asset in Europe. In Ukraine, there's been 1,000 years of war fought over that land. It's the richest farmland in the world. It's the breadbasket of Europe. 500,000 kids almost, Ukrainian kids, have died to keep that land as part of Ukraine. They almost certainly didn't know about this loan condition. They've already sold 30% of it. The buyers were DuPont, Cargill, and Monsanto. Who do you think owns all of those companies? Yeah, BlackRock. And then in December, President Biden gave out the contract to rebuild Ukraine. And who do you think got that contract? BlackRock. So they're doing this right in front of us. They don't even care that we know anymore, because they know that they can get away with it. And how do they know that? Because they have a strategy. And that strategy is an old strategy, which is they keep us at war with each other. They keep us hating on each other. They keep the Republicans and Democrats fighting each other, and black against white, and all these divisions that they sow. So in October of 1960, or right before, a month before the November election, King gets arrested at a lunch counter sit-in in DeKalb County, Georgia. My father then finds out about it. And my father then goes home and he starts thinking about it. You know, that they arrested this guy for doing nothing, and now they moved him in the middle of the night. Now they might kill him. He gets the DeKalb County sheriff on the line at home. And he says, "This is Robert Kennedy. My brother's going to be president in a month. If anything happens to Dr. King, we will remember who you are, and you will not forget it." And he gets Jack to call the governor. And the next morning, King was released.
This is one country. It has become one country because all of us and all the people who came here had an equal chance to develop their talent.
Just as I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
No memorial oration or eulogy could more eloquently honor President Kennedy's memory than the earliest possible passage of the Civil Rights Bill for which he fought so long.
JFK's assassinated. Lyndon B. Johnson's in office. Republicans and Democrats, back in the day, Dixiecrats, bipartisanly bring a bill to the desk of Lyndon B. Johnson to sign civil rights legislation in New York. According to whatever reports you believe, Lyndon B. Johnson says, we bring this legislation, we sign this legislation into law, we'll have the Negroes voting for us for the next 50 years. Sure enough, that's what it was. It wasn't just him, it was us. And his intent wasn't honorable. Ours was.
The white liberal differs from the white conservative only in one way. The liberal is more deceitful, more hypocritical than the conservative. Both want power, but the white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. And by winning the friendship and support of the Negro, the white liberal is able to use the Negro as a pawn or a weapon in this political football game that is constantly raging between the white liberals and the white conservatives. The American Negro is nothing but a political football, and the white liberals control this ball through tricks or tokenism, false promises of integration and civil rights. In this game of deceiving and using the American Negro, the white liberals have complete cooperation of the Negro civil rights leaders, who sell our people out for a few crumbs of token recognition, token gain, token progress.
So if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
The Democratic Party is very, very shrewd. They have branded themselves as the party of compassion. It's a type of compassion where you see a guy beat up his wife and say, "I'm doing this because I love you." You know, that type of compassion. The guy that beats up his children and locks them up and say he's doing it because he loves them. No, he's doing it for control. The way they sell it is that they first have to demoralize you. The pain is the point. It's a trick of the devil. And they've been great at it ever since slavery. We keep you here on this plantation to work for us because we care about you. We can't let you go out there. That's the Democratic Party, man. They're masters at it, and they've always done it, and they're never going to stop it till we make it. Joe Biden, you know, he always says he came from a slave state. So he sees himself as a plantation owner anyway, right? He sees the inner cities as a cotton field. And he puts the Black Caucus up there and the Black preachers and the Black Civil Rights Organizations as the House Negroes, and so it's a variation on the thing. So,
they're gonna put y'all back in chains.
So he wants black people to make sure, understand, that whatever you get come from the benevolent master.
We are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
We must deracialize race. We must do everything we can to fill the hole that's in the hearts of our children that causes them to devalue their life to the point where they're willing to take their own or take someone else's.
So the civil rights movement was and is still described as a Christian movement.
Yeah.
Was it?
No, anything but.
If you go to Black Lives Matter website, it says that we disrupt the nuclear family. That's my wife. This is our 4 children. Why would you disrupt the nuclear family?
In his Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx wrote, "The theory of communism may be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of private property." In Chapter 2, abolition of the family, the bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course.
As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat.
We actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular, we are trained Marxists.
I do believe in Marxism. It's a philosophy that I learned really early on in my organizing career.
He was more like Rasputin than he was Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. We've been sort of investigating throughout this documentary, where did the money go that was given to Black Lives Matter? We never even really got a full answer of how much money was given.
I often say that BLM now stands for Buy Lavish Mansions, because that's what the BLM movement does. We actually saw in recent weeks there was a person who was effectively working for BLM that personally purchased a mansion. She pays $3 million for it. Within days, like I think it's 48 hours later, flips that to the BLM organization, who pays nearly $6 million for that same house, booking a personal profit to the person who actually bought it. So that's a self-dealing transaction that enriches personally somebody who's working for Black Lives Matter. Why is BLM buying big lavish mansions in the first place?
What is it that you believe? I mean, what week of pregnancy should abortion access be cut off?
We need to restore the protections of Roe versus Wade. We're not trying to do something new.
Well, that was nebulous because it was about viability, which could be anywhere between 20 to 24 weeks. And
so no. Let me be very clear.
The Women's Health Protection Act that the White House also endorsed.
Let me be very clear. From day one, the president has been clear. I have been clear. We need to put back the protections that are in Roe v. Wade into law. Since the Supreme Court took it, Congress has the power and ability to pass legislation to put those protections back in law, and Joe Biden will sign that bill. So that is what we want.
But does it need to be specific in terms of defining and where that guarantee goes up to and where it does not, at which week of pregnancy?
We need to put back in place the protections of Roe versus Wade.
You know why I'm asking you this question, though. Because
we're not trying to do anything that did not exist before June of last year.
It wasn't crafted into law. And that's why I'm asking you for the specifics.
But just to put it simply, it's now up to the states. And like Ronald Reagan, I'm a believer in the exceptions, the 3 exceptions, as you know, and rape, incest, life of the mother. And we have a situation now where it's in the states' hands. The people are going to be voting. The last thing people want is for that to go back into the federal government.
So you wouldn't support a national ban?
No, I wouldn't support a national ban. No, I would not.
In 2013, I began and orchestrated an almost 3-year-long, very in-depth, comprehensive investigative journalism study about the harvesting and trafficking of body parts from late-term abortions. There's multiple violations and multiple issues that you very quickly start to learn about when you look into it. There's the basic problem of selling body parts, where you're basically creating a system, creating transactions, creating business relationships that incentivize the objectification and the destruction of human beings in order to keep the business going. So for about 30 months, we went undercover with the explicit purpose of partnering with some of the biggest Planned Parenthood abortion clinics in the country to send their technicians in, harvest body parts from the abortions that were being done that day, then package up the parts and ship them off to different customers all around the country, sometimes around the world. In July of 2015, we began to release the Undercover video series.
What would you expect for intact tissue? What sort of compensation? What sort of...
Well, why don't you start by telling me what you used to pay her?
Okay. I don't think so. I would like to know what would make you happy. What would work for you? Tell me what you really...
$75 a specimen. I want a Lamborghini. I said I want a Lamborghini.
Looking back on it from the information that we know now, I now know what was going on was that Kamala Harris, at the explicit instruction of Planned Parenthood, had targeted me, and me alone, among all undercover video news gatherers in the state of California, to enforce the California video recording law against me and to punish me for speaking the truth about her powerful campaign donors at Planned Parenthood. What we've come to learn in the years since, just 2 weeks before serving the search warrant on my home, Kamala Harris had a secret meeting in Los Angeles with several top-level executives of Planned Parenthood in California. We then found out from the California DOJ investigator reports that Planned Parenthood's top lawyer in California had specifically instructed the California DOJ agents that Planned Parenthood wanted the video equipment and the computers that I was using to publish the videos to be seized, in order to shut me up, in order to prevent me from continuing to publish the truth about Planned Parenthood's involvement in fetal trafficking, and in order to punish me for speaking out with a message that was disfavored by Planned Parenthood and by Kamala Harris in the state of California. Kamala Harris is the single greatest threat to First Amendment civil liberties that our country has ever seen.
Ready for some BLM pride? Well, according to their IRS form, $200,000 went to the Transgender Justice Funding Project. Another $200,000 went to the Transgender United Fund. Another $200,000 went to the Transgendered Law Center. Another $200,000 went to Black Transgendered Media. Another $200,000 went to the Transgendered Variant and Intersex Justice Project. Another $200K went to the Transgendered District. By the way, if you're wondering what that is, it's purportedly going to be the all transgender district, and I guess that's really, really important for Black America advancement in society, I guess, or whatever. Another $200K went to the St. James Infirmary. That organization, by the way, is for, according to their website, it's run by sex workers and is for them. Specifically, escorts, BDSM workers, strippers, peep show workers, phone sex operators, and webcam performers. So yeah, going to be apparently great big things involving sex workers in the future for Black America. In continuation, the Center for Halstead received $200,000 from Black Lives Matter. They are Chicago's community center dedicated to securing the health and well-being of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, and queer people of Chicago. Similarly, we have the Audre Lorde Project, which received $200,000, and according to their website, they are a lesbian, gay, bisexual, two-spirit, trans, and gender nonconforming people of color community organizing center. Another $400,000 went to Transgender Advocates Knowledgeable Empowering, or TAKE, as it's known for short. The founder of that organization is a transgendered individual by the name of Darrenisha Duncan Boyd. Darrenisha is also the executive director of the Transgendered United Fund, which I mentioned earlier, which secured $200,000. So a total $600,000 of BLM money went to a transgendered woman named Darrenisha Boyd, who is operating 2 charities. I found that piece to be very interesting. Here is Darrenisha describing in a 2020 interview how they were able to use that money that was received to the organization to purchase more real estate.
We're opening up a new resource center here, and the resource center is almost 3 times as big as our last space that we was in. So we have lots of space and lots of rooms for our clients to come in and enjoy.
I noticed that real estate seems to be a common theme amongst these transgendered organizations.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly, but fires have been started.
What you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin over the course of the night. A second night since Jacob Blake was seen shot in the back 7 times by a police officer. And what you are seeing now, these images came and come in stark contrast to what we saw over the course of the daytime hours in Kenosha and into the early evening, which were largely peaceful demonstrations in the face.
Where else have we heard that type of gaslighting language before?
We did have a legitimate election before, and the elected president was removed after we had major street violence. There were pictures that people running around with these we were told were neo-Nazis.
First of all, the vast majority of those who participated on the Maidan were peaceful protesters. If you had a chance to see the pictures, many of us visited, including many members here. There were mothers and grandmothers and veterans.
Let me note that
However,
before you go on, I saw those pictures as well. I also saw a lot of pictures of people throwing fireballs at groups of policemen who were huddled over in a corner where people were shooting into the ranks of police. So yes, there were mothers with flowers, but there were also very dangerous street fighters who were engaged in those demonstrations. The question is, were there neo-Nazi groups involved in that?
There were, as I said, almost every color of Ukraine was represented, including some ugly colors.
The answer is yes, then.
I wonder if there are any other similarities between the 2020 BLM riots and the Ukraine 2014 Maidan revolutions.
Patrice likes parties, by the way, because she also threw a party there to celebrate the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And yeah, that's somewhat suspicious, because what do Democrats have to do with Black Lives Matter? I think I'll just leave that question open-ended.
It seems to me it has to be sustained in order to maintain the pressure and to
They're not going to stop. This is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not.
President Kennedy once said that we have the capacity to make this the best generation in the history of mankind, to make it the last. If we do our duty, if we meet our responsibilities and our obligations, not just as Democrats, but as American citizens, in our local cities, in towns, and farms, in our states, and in the country as a whole, and this country is going to be the best generation in the history of mankind.
Well, that's a real question, isn't it? Why? The how and the who is just scenery for the public. Oswald, Ruby, Cuba, the mafia. Keeps them guessing like some kind of parlor game, prevents them from asking the most important question, why? Why was Kennedy killed? Who benefited? Who has the power to cover it up?
Whom do you blame for your brother's death?
I will quote my brother the day before he died, referring to the bombing of his house. He stated that he felt the bombing of his home was much bigger than the black Muslims. 1 week later, he was assassinated. If he felt that the bombing was bigger than the black Muslims, then I feel that possibly his assassination was bigger than the black Muslims.
Malcolm's death was especially tragic because it came at a moment where the arc of his life had swung toward viewing all people as part of the brotherhood of humanity. The central revelation that transformed him was a trip to Mecca, where he saw people of every race, creed, and color worshiping in the same places and praying to the same God. After that, he saw his life's mission as being a truth teller.
I'm speaking now from what I think, from what I have seen, from what I have analyzed, and the conclusions that I have reached. It's not a case of being good and bad, good or bad, blacks and whites. It's a case of being good or bad human beings.
Malcolm came to believe that it was his purpose to unite people across racial lines, to challenge the power of oppression and injustice in America.
Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life.
Malcolm X, last week, sought to make contact with the State Department to discuss threats against his life. I note that he said in a press interview last week also that he was practically dead. He was going to be killed because he knew too much. These things raise questions in my mind. What did he know that was about to bring about his death? Why did he consider the matter to be a responsibility which should be brought to the attention of the State Department? It seems to me that these questions are serious enough to require a federal investigation into the circumstances surrounding Malcolm X's murder.
Come on, man. No, they're taking me in because of the fact that I lived in the Soviet Union. I'm just a patsy.
The key to this is Brown Brothers Harriman. Okay?
Fix the money, fix the world.
Here's Dick Billings standing there with Rip Robertson and John Martino, with Martino jumping up and down, and William D. Pauley standing there. And Martino is calling Kennedy no good traitor, son of a bitch, and he's jumping him down. And William Pauley turns to him and says, "Don't worry, John, we're gonna kill that motherfucker."
Did the CIA's S-Force take vengeance on President Kennedy 2.5 years after the Bay of Pigs fiasco? Was his brother's assassination 5 years later another Howard Hughes and Robert Mayhew operation?
To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it.
Let me begin this evening by expressing my gratitude to the American people for your outpouring of love and support following the assassination attempt at my rally on Saturday.
I have saved this one opportunity, my only event of today, to speak briefly to you about the mindless menace of violence in America which again stains our land.
Child trafficking is run as a single integrated world operation. This operation is coordinated by the CIA.
I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God. President Trump has been working behind the scenes with other foreign leaders globally to shut down human trafficking forever.
38-year-old Kamala Harris came out of nowhere and was swept into office as San Francisco's district attorney.
In 2004, Kamala Harris was elected. Everything just went down the tubes. Everything he did to gather information and to try and prosecute and go after them disappeared and went the other way. She shielded and protected them, and we were floored at what happened. Her participation in going after clergy or predators of the Catholic Church or bishops who had enabled these people was less than zero. I would like her to produce one clergy abuser or one bishop that she's even tried to prosecute. I'd like to hear it.
You cannot possibly understand their pervasiveness unless you were raised in their world. I will now explain the link between Luciferianism and the CIA's Project MKUltra.
The most unifying theme for all Americans is that we all love our children. If we all unite around that issue now, we can finally give them the protection, the health, and the future that they deserve.
I wanted to do something to let them know I was okay. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting, and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight."
I'm dreaming for the day where people will say, I don't care how you view the color of my skin. I'm not sitting here dreaming about a day that I will be free, hoping for one day I'll be free, saying that on some certain day I'll be free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. I hope I live to see the day where everybody will already know that as a man, as a Christian, and as an American, that you are already, like I am, you are already free.
It is not the concern of any one race. The victims of the violence are black and white, rich and poor, young and old, famous and unknown. They are most important of all, human beings whom other human beings loved and needed.
In a very real sense, because of you, he is with us still.